are you doing
Okay.
today, Uncle Art?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And who's that you're cuddling there?
This is Hanalei, but she's asleep.
Yep, she sure is.
Yeah.
Hi, Mihita. Good morning.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining Uncle Art. It's so good to see you and interview you. So
Thank you.
first question, what's your favorite memory growing up?
As I was looking at this question, the words growing up kept coming up into my mind. I did my growing up very fast, very, very fast. I remember that I really didn't have much of a childhood. I was in third grade when I started my first job. So anyway, I would get off the bus and go cut grass at her yard, and she would pay me 25 cents. And I remember I would do that 2 or 3 days a week. That was my very first job. The first time I got paid, I gave my mother the quarter and told her, here, that's to help you. Then the next time she paid me, I told Mom, can I use this quarter to buy some underwear? Because up to that point, I was not wearing any underwear. I was going commando. I didn't know that you had to have underwear. And I noticed when I went to PE that some of the other guys were wearing underwear. So I told Mom, can I buy underwear? So that was the first time that I had underwear, and I bought it with my first job. But that's not my favorite memory. The favorite memory, and we're going to have a lot of talking here. I have a lot of memories, but my favorite memory, I was in second grade. We were living in Isleta, and I remember that it was Christmas time. It was Christmas Eve, and we were all inside. It was Jose Luis and me and Gloria. Uncle Quito wasn't born yet, but it was just the three of us, me, Gloria, and Jose Luis. And it was Christmas Eve, and we heard noise outside the front door. So we ran to the front door, and I remember opening the front door, and the tina, the tub that we used to take our bath in, was in the front of the door, and it was full of candy. I heard the bells, and we opened the door, and as I ran out, I looked at the tub, and then I looked up, and just before it went out of sight, I saw the boots that my dad always wore going around the corner. And I thought, wait a minute, I know who Santa Claus is. And that was the first time that I realized that our dad was Santa Claus. So one of my favorite memories is remembering how I found out that Dad really did like us, loved us, and also that the dad is Santa Claus. So I'll always remember
my
that.
goodness, that is a wonderful memory.
With you. My favorite one, and one that I always remember, is that one. Okay, what? Huh? What?
Yep, your camera fell off. Yeah.
How do you turn the camera on? Is it on? I assumed it was part of the video. Where? Right here?
Right here.
Start video.
Uh-huh. Right there.
There you are. You're back.
Well, it's going off by itself, but
every time that you don't see yourself up here, push it.
Okay, all right.
So what was your favorite gift from Mom and Dad?
Again, as I told you at the beginning, I did a lot of growing up very fast, and I really don't remember very much having received any particular gift from mother and father, but I do remember one gift that my father and mother gave me. It was, my mother was pregnant with me, and she was having a lot of trouble with the pregnancy. And this is all that she told me afterwards. And so she made a promise to Saint Raymond, San Ramon, who is the patron saint of pregnant women, that if everything went okay, that she would name me after that saint. And so that's why my name is Ramon. But when I was born, I had a lot of trouble with my lungs. I was having trouble breathing. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks after I was born that I started having a lot of, I couldn't breathe. This is what my mother told me. And so they called the doctor. They were living in Presidio at that time. My father was not employed, but the owner of one of the bars there in Presidio had taken him under as a friend, and she was letting him work there at the bar. He would clean, and he would stock the refrigerators and bring the ice. Anyway, they called the doctor, and the doctor told my father and mother, this boy is going to die if you don't take to the hospital right away. So my father said, well, what can we do? There's no hospital here in Presidio. The doctor told him, well, you'll have to take him to the nearest hospital, which is in El Paso. So my father went and found a guy that was drinking beer. He was a friend, but just a friend. And he told me, let's go, come on, let's go baptize this boy. So we ran across, they took me to the church across the street, and that man became my godfather. He baptized me. And then father, mother, and our grandmother, Mama Pepa, got into a truck that Dad borrowed. And the sheriff said, well, I'll go with you to Marfa. And then in Marfa, they turned him over to the state trooper, and the state trooper kept turning us over. My father was driving hard, fast, and they got to El Paso, and they went to Thomason, the hospital, and my father took me in, and I'm here because of that. So with the best gift that my mother and father gave me was my life.
Oh my gosh.
As I said, I didn't get very many gifts from my dad because I was the oldest. And, well, I wasn't the oldest, I was number 2, but I always became very independent, and anything that I needed, I always was able to provide.
Dude, that is an amazing story. Do you know where Uncle Jose Luis was during this? Did he go with you guys in the car?
Yeah, he was already 2 years old, because remember, 2 years
Oh my
apart.
gosh.
Oh my gosh, your parents.
That's how Dad ended up in El Paso. Well, yeah. And then he cried.
Okay,
I told
so-
you they were going to be tearjerkers.
I love it. I think this is wonderful. So next question, who was Grandma and Grandpa's favorite and why? So who was your mother and father's favorite and why?
Well, of course, you know the answer is going to be me. And it was me. And I really think that, in my own opinion, I was the favorite. And I think, again, it's because of the situation. You know, I've always been a type A personality. I've always been wanting to have everything just right. And I like to think that the reason mother and father thought I was their favorite was because of the way I helped them. And I remember one time my mother was having trouble because she had to wake up in the middle of the night to feed the current baby, whoever the baby was. And so I remember telling her, you know what, Mom, you go to sleep, and I'll get up and feed whichever baby it was. It could have been Rosa, it could have been Judy. And so at that time, well, all I had to do was heat the bottle. She would prepare the bottles, and then I would go ahead and heat the milk or whatever it was. And so my mother could keep sleeping while I would wake up and go and take care of the babies. So,
How old were you when you think you did that?
I was in grade school. Remember, my mother was always having babies, so there was always a baby that had to be taken care of. And then I would be falling asleep in school, and I would always tell the teacher, well, I have to take care of my baby. So that was it. So yes, I truly believe that I was Mom and Dad's favorite. They never told me that. But I always like to think that they knew that I was doing the best I could to be a responsible kid.
Man, oh man, that's amazing. Wow. Okay, Magali, we have you back, so I'll let you ask this last question. I'm sure this is going to be a good one.
Okay. What's a secret you've kept from the family?
There's several. There are several. I've been thinking about this one for a long time, and I decided to go with one that I really have felt in the bottom of my heart very, very, very strongly about. When I was a senior in college, I was in education. I was studying to be a teacher, and there was a girl that had lived with us nearby at Isleta when we were in Isleta. And of course, by now we were living in Hacienda, and her family had also moved to another part. They were no longer in Isleta, and she was also in education. And so I talked to her, and I was already as a senior, and I think she was a sophomore, maybe a second year freshman, I don't know. But anyway, she was taking early courses, but she was already doing her teaching, practice teaching, or wherever they had. And so she would ask me to help her, and I would go help her with her bulletin boards and lesson plans. And I remember also doing some essays for her, because I've always been again, a type A personality, where a comma is a comma and a period is a period and a quotation mark is a quotation mark. And so she would say, can you help me with this essay? And I would end up having to rewrite the whole thing. So anyway, we became friends. And then I went into the Army, and I think I gave her my address, or I told her I would write to her. So I wrote from Japan, because remember, I was in the Army in Japan. And over the 2 years that I was in Japan, we became pen pals, friends. And I still to this day do not remember if I broached the subject or she started it. But anyway, we were both under the impression that as soon as I got back to El Paso from Japan, that we would get married. And but this was all on paper, letters, and she would send me little notepads and little pictures, and the typical letters, and I would write back to her. And I really and truly, I must have given her the impression that we would get married. We had never really dated, except we were friends. So anyway. And I remember she asked me if I could bring her a set of dishes from Japan. Noritaki, I don't know if you are familiar with, a very famous Japanese brand. I bought a set of 12 for 12 people, both for my mother and for her. So I brought 2 sets. And I remember that when I got home, I went to her house, and I remember saying, it's not any different driving in Japan as it is here in El Paso. And I remember that as I turned at Pinky's, at the end of Adobe, I said, wait a minute, I'm in the wrong lane. I was so used, because in Japan, they drive on the other side of the, can you see me? Anyway, I was driving on the wrong side of the road. So I quickly moved over to the other side, and I made it to her house. And I knocked on the door. I walked in, and she said hi, and I said hi. And then her father was there. And she said that he was, I don't know how the conversation went, but anyway, she told me that he was a Mason, one of the organization, the Shriner, a Mason. And I thought, uh-oh, because at that time, Catholics were not allowed to be Masons. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute. And then I asked her, are you Catholic? I guess I just never had thought about it. And she said, no, we're not Catholic. So I told her, well, then I'm sorry. At that time, Catholics married Catholics, and there was no way that I was ever going to marry someone who was not a Catholic. And so the first time that I saw her in person, after having written to her 2 years, I had to tell her, sorry, goodbye.
Oh my
and I
God.
walked.
Wow.
And
And you
that's a
never saw her
secret that
again?
I never told my parents, and I never told anybody else. And everybody has asked me, why didn't you get married? Why didn't you get married? And I said, well, I almost got married, but that was the closest I ever came. And Why? Well, you know what? It was to be. You know, God knows His business. I guess I just wasn't destined to get married. So anyway, that's a secret that you all are hearing it for the first time, and I feel very badly.
Wow.
I have never connected with that girl again. We just never saw each other again. And she lived close by, and I never saw her again or heard from her. I never made any effort to be in touch with her because she wasn't Catholic, and I couldn't marry
Oh my
anyone who wasn't.
gosh.
And when we
Okay.
get to number 5, I'll tell you one of the other secrets that probably you don't know about. Okay?
Well, then let's just get right into it. Why don't you divulge, share all your secrets.
When I was growing up there in Adobe, we went to San Antonio Church, and Father Ochoa, your dad, and I'm sure your mom will remember Father Ochoa, but he was very famous in the Lower Valley. He had the 3 churches, San Antonio, San Jose, and Little Flower, and he was a Jesuit, and he would ride his bicycle, and he was a character. And I was an altar boy, and I wanted to be a priest. And so I talked to Father Cho, and he said, well, why not? Let's do it. So when I graduated from the 8th grade, I applied, I wanted to go to the seminary so that I could learn to be a priest. And I was very serious about it. And Father Cho and I went and we talked to the bishop. And I guess, I don't know why, but I was not accepted. I was not accepted, so I had to go back to Bel Air. And I know I showed up on the first day at Bel Air, and everybody said, hey, I thought you were going to be, everybody said, I thought you were going to be a priest. And I said, well, I guess not. So there's another career that I didn't follow. I didn't follow the married career, follow the priesthood. So I became a teacher. And
another path that God probably put you on, right? Like all of these things, it's pretty cool.
And then after being a teacher, I became a nurse. And studies have shown that the 2 most trusted careers are teaching and nursing. And I'm very glad that I have been able to do both of them. So that's another secret that maybe Jose Luis and Gloria might remember, but I'm sure the rest of you did not know that I had thought to be a priest someday. But again, it wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. And I accept life. I've had a very good life. On this video, I want everybody to know. I'm on camera. I want everybody
we lost
to
you.
know.
We lost you. Come back when you tell it.
No, it's there.
There you go.
I had a very good life, and I'm very happy, and I have enjoyed being part of the Oaxaca clan. I remember several things about each of them, each of my brothers. So Jose Luis, I remember that he went to California. My dad told me, go see what Jose Luis is doing. I forget if I was already teaching or maybe I was still in school, but I went to California because Jose Luis had gone. And when I got to California, we looked, Gloria and Charlie went with me, and we found Jose Luis, and I told him, Dad wants you to come home. And Jose Luis said, well, I don't think the life I'm leading here is the kind of life that Dad wants me to live in El Paso. So you tell Dad I'm staying in California. And I guess that was to be another thing. So Jose Luis stayed in California, and I came back and told Dad he's happy there. He's okay. Gloria, I remember we would go to the Sun Carnival parade. And in those days, when the parade ended, they would take they would tear the floats apart. You know, people could take pieces. So Jose Luis and I would always end up taking pieces of the floats, and then we'd go home, and we had a wagon, and we would make our own little Sun Carnival float out of the pieces that we had, and then Gloria would sit on the stool on the wagon, and she would wave, and she was the Sun Carnival queen, and we'd have our own parade, and we'd parade down the street. This is when we were living in Isleta. Quito. Quito, you know they call him Quito, right? Do you know, Belen, do you remember why they call Quito Quito?
I want to say it's one of you couldn't pronounce his name, Querido,
No,
right? Or
no,
okay,
it was
then
because guess who was his mother's favorite? The little brown chubby kid that came along and took over all. He dethroned Gloria, he dethroned me, and he dethroned Jose Luis. And my mother called him mi querido, and of course I couldn't pronounce querido, so I would say Quito, hey Quito, and that's where Quito came from. So I'm the one to call Quito because he was my mother's querido. Okay?
Aw,
And then we
got
come
it.
to Rosalinda. Rosalinda has always been Rosalinda. I swear that girl has been the uniqueness of all of us. And I remember very little about her and Judy. All I remember is that my dad used to have problems with them as they were growing up. Martha would be on the phone and I would go and say, Martha, that's enough. And I would hang up on her and she'd be talking to her boyfriend and she would not be very happy about that. Uncle Victor was in the Army. I remember he was in, I was visiting Germany on my way to Saudi Arabia. And I remember Victor meeting us in Belgium, and we toured Belgium and Germany. So I remember Victor as a soldier. And then there's Carlos Magali, your father. Him, I remember playing baseball and football and being an athlete along with your Uncle Harvey. So that's about, I don't remember seeing Carlos play because Friday nights I would be working, and I don't remember ever having seen him play, but I know that he was a football player and also baseball. And then we come to, who's next after, then Eva, Evalina and Marta. Marta, they had a lot of trouble with their dad, but they survived. They survived. And then by the time Terry came along, and then there's Lucelena, they were the chiple and the consentidas of their dad. So, you know, I guess I have to, going back to number 3, who was mom and dad's favorite. I think they had, everyone was their favorite. You know, they really loved each other in their own way. In their own way, they loved all of us. We were all their favorites. And then I can't finish without talking about Kamarudin. Kamarudin became was my student at when I was in the Peace Corps. And I remember the very first time that I went into the classroom, and I used the term classroom very, very, very loosely. It was a big room. It had windows all around, but there was no glass in the windows because it was just an old building. And it was March when I first started teaching, because I got to Afghanistan when I joined the Peace Corps in January, and it took until March before we were allowed to go into the classroom. We had to learn the language and learn how to be a Peace Corps volunteer and all that. So, and I remember, what is this? I have to start your video. Oh,
yeah, it stopped.
What happened? Huh?
There we go.
Oh, it's fine.
It's on again?
You're on again.
Is it on? Okay, so anyway, the first day of class, there were 72 students sitting there shivering because there was no heat and no glass in the windows. And the monitor, they had a boy who was the monitor. He took roll and he came and said, "There are 71 students present, sir." And he said, "One is absent, but we think he'll be here tomorrow." So the next day, I went in, and there was Kamarudin sitting in the front row, and it was freezing cold, and he's sitting there with a short sleeve shirt, and it was yellow polka dot yellow shirt, and then he said, "I'm the new student. I wasn't here yesterday, but I'm here now." And then when class ended, he came and said, "I already speak English, so don't worry about me." So that was the very first thing he said to me. "I already speak English." So that day I had taken my lunch, but I didn't have anything to drink. And so he saw me eating. I was sitting there by the classroom, and he said, "Can I help you? Anything?" And I said, "Well, could you go to that little snack bar down the road and get me a Coke and some cookies?" And is it us?
No.
And so I gave him the money, And I told him, and buy a Coke for yourself. So he came back and gave me the Coke and the cookies, and he sat down next to me and started talking, telling me where he was from and everything else. And I said, did you get a Coke? And he said, no. I said, I just don't need a Coke. Well, he had never had a Coke in his life. He didn't know what Cokes were because he had come from his village and there was no such thing as Cokes. So anyway, that was in 1977. 1977. I was in Pakistan 3 or 4 months ago. I'm sure you all heard about me being stranded for 2.5 months. But anyway, and we counted, and from Kamaruddin, there are 61 people that are now under Kamaruddin and that are being supported by Kamaruddin, who's being supported by me. So from one boy in 1977, there are now 61. And that includes his mother, who is still alive. His father I met, but his father died many years ago. And then he's got a brother who has a wife and 5 children. And then he's got 19 children of his own, and 7 are already married and they have children. And so counting everybody that's connected to Kamaruddin, we're talking about 61 people. So when people ask me, are you sorry that you never got married? You didn't have any children? I said, what are you talking about? I have 19 grandchildren. I have one. And, but this time when I was in Pakistan, we agreed that, we never knew what they would call me. Am I the brother? Who am I? So we decided that I would be their uncle. So that makes me Kamaruddin's brother. So now I'm Uncle Art, Uncle Arturo, and they always call me uncle because to them, in their language, uncle is an honorific title, like, sir or something like that. So they've always called me uncle. So now I'm officially an uncle. You know that I'm godfather to Miguel, and I'm godfather to Gloria's children, and I'm godfather to Jacob, and I'm godfather to Judy's children. But Aroncito is my favorite godson, and only because he's the one that's going to change my diaper. And I keep wanting to make sure that all these godchildren that are out there, Miguel and Danny and Jacob, yes, I love them as much as I love Aron, but they're already married, they've got their families, and Aroncito is the one that is designated to be my diaper changer, and he's the one that's gonna give me my bath, and he's gonna make sure that my toenails are cut. And if he doesn't, I'm gonna come back and haunt him forever. So, and another memory that I have is when Aron was born. And I remember so vividly that we made it to the hospital. Juan and I made it back in time. And Juan went back, and he was there when Aron was born. And I arrived a little later. Aunt Eva was already there. And I remember Juan coming out of the room, and he's holding Aron in his arms. And the look on his face said, "Look what I did." And I thought to myself, no, Juan, you didn't do it. But the way Juan was looking down at it all, he was saying, look what I did, look what I did. And I remember so much, I was crying. I cried that whole time that Aron was being shown out to everybody. But I love all my godsons, all my godchildren, but Aron is going to change my diaper. So we
Uncle
have to keep
Art,
that in mind.
Remind me, what is the age difference between you and Aunt Luz?
Well, let's see, I was born in 1943. And Lucelena was born in 1968.
Okay, so 45 years? No, 35 years.
35? 35?
35.
Something like that, yeah.
So you completely remember her growing up and being part of her life.
Oh yeah, definitely. For Lucelena, one time we were on a bicycle. I had a bicycle, and she and I would ride out into the countryside. We'd drive to Zaragoza, to Socorro. We'd go, and we would always stop at the bakeries, and I have always been good friends. And I remember one time we stopped and we got a donut, and then she would ride in the back of the bicycle, And so I put her on the back of the bicycle, and then I swung my legs over to sit on the bicycle. And Lucelena said, "Arturo, you sat on my donut." She had put her donut on the seat while she was adjusting herself, and I ended up sitting on her donut. But guess what? She ate the donut anyway. So that's another memory that I have. I tell you, it's when you've lived the life that I have at Adobe and Isleta and Altavista. Altavista, you know where Altavista is here in El Paso? It's the one that's on Piedras. No, Copia. There's a school there, yellow building, and they are in the process of closing that school down. Jose Luis and I went to Altavista for pre-K. I remember we lived on Tularosa Street when we first got to El Paso. We lived in a garage. Tio Cecilio had already come to El Paso, and he had a house. And so when father and mother and I and Jose Luis and Mama Pepa came from Presidio because they were saving my life, then we ended up in the garage. So our first home in El Paso was in a garage on Tularosa, and that's where I went to school. I also went to Incarnate Word School, which is a school there in Isleta, the Mission. And then I went to Isleta Elementary, and then we ended up at Hacienda, and then at Bel Air. And then I went to UTEP. It was TWC, Texas Western College at that time. I graduated in '65. We've already had a 50th class reunion, and then I graduated again in 1986 from the nursing school. Okay? Any questions?
I love it.
Comments? What else can I say?
This was amazing.
I really enjoyed this. And in closing, to everyone who will listen and see this video, I love every one of you very, very much. Long live the Oaxacas. At Adobe, there's a Adobe in a glass case, and it says, in loving memory of the home that Javier and Lala made for the Oaxacas unto all generations. Okay? All right. You're always welcome at Adobe, and there's a room that it will be the one that will end up welcoming everybody when my time to go home. Bye.